You're watching the YouTube version of the We Are Innovation podcast. Join us as we explore how innovation, new technologies, and human creativity improve our lives. The future is calling.
Hi, I'm Federico Fernández. Welcome to a new episode of the We Are Innovation podcast. Today, we're going to talk about innovation in Indonesia and Malaysia, particularly an agenda for policy making. And for that, I am accompanied by Benedict Weerasena. I hope I'm pronouncing his surname correctly. If not, he can he can say it how it is in a few seconds. But Benedict, among other things, he is the co-author of the report An Innovation-Led Policy for the Indonesian Government. Benedict is the research director of Bait Al Amanah, or House of Trust in English, based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. His research interests include public finance, behavioral economics, development studies, international political economy, and education policy. He has participated and presented in various international conferences, as well as economic updates. You can find more about Benedict and the great work he's doing at the House of Trust on the House of Trust website. I'm going to leave a link on the description of the episode below. And by the way, the House of Trust has just become the newest partner and the first Malaysian partner of We Are Innovation, which makes us extremely happy and proud for that. And thanks, Benedict, for that. Benedict, welcome to the We Are Innovation podcast.
Thank you so much, Federico, for having me on this podcast. Thank you for the very kind introduction. And I must say that we at Bait Al Amanah House of Trust, based in Kuala Lumpur, we are delighted to be part of this network, a growing network indeed. And interestingly, the first one from Malaysia, we are really excited to look for more opportunities and potentials from this engagement together with We Are Innovation to see how we can take innovation to a whole new level in Malaysia as well as in the region.
Indeed, and really, it's a great pleasure, and I'm sure it's going to, many things. I mean, well, I'm not going to explain, but there are a lot of interesting things happening in Malaysia, in the rest of the region. Asia is the home of innovation in many ways. So it's for us, it's extremely important to have a partner like the House of Trust, and I'm sure a lot of things and a lot of great synergies are going to come from this partnership. So let's go. I want to talk to you a little bit about Malaysia as well, because it's a country I visited this year for the first time. I'm very fond of for many reasons, and you're here, so it's a good opportunity. But let's from Kuala Lumpur, let's go to Indonesia first, and let's talk about the report that you're a co-author, and let's talk about Indonesia in general. The first question I want to ask you has to do with on the report and some material that you have produced to promote the report. There are mentions as to other indexes, in particularly the Global Innovation Index, and you make some sort of assessment of Indonesia's current ranking there. And what I want to ask you in particularly is, how do you envision Indonesia leveraging its strengths, particularly in business environment and entrepreneurial culture, to catalyze a broader innovation in other sectors?
So as we know, Indonesia is really a rising force in the region as well as the world. They are touted to be one of the largest economies, the fourth largest economy by, if I'm not mistaken, 2030. And it's really growing by leaps and bounds. It's the most exciting country in the Southeast Asian region now. And indeed, there is a lot of potential in Indonesia. From our research, from our report, what we noticed and we highlighted is that in a global innovation index, they are ranked 61st. Still quite far behind, actually, in terms of the innovation levels of the country. A lot of potential there. But in terms of business environment, they are the 11th out of the ranking of all the countries, as well as 5th in terms of entrepreneurial policy and culture. What we notice is that this entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial culture is really driven from a bottom-up approach. In the way Indonesia is structured, in the demographics and the way the country, the different islands, far from one another, there's a lot of decentralization in terms of policy making, in terms of governance. And we see that this spills over to the entrepreneurship culture as well, where a lot of entrepreneurs rise up from their different regions and different islands per se, and different regions as well. And these seize the opportunities from a very much a large market size, a market population in Indonesia, which is one of the world's the world's most populous Muslim country actually. Yeah, with over 200 over million population size and a huge among sizable size of them being a young population. That's why this a lot of these entrepreneurs are seizing these opportunities that arise from the need for to fill the gaps in the market. Wherever there's an issue, there is a problem in society that needs to be addressed, in comes an entrepreneur with a new idea. A very good example is Gojek, for example, where there's a rise of the need for shared mobility, and through this need, through this necessity, we see the rise of Gojek to fit that need, to fulfill that need, the requirement in society as an innovative approach to solve the challenge of mobility and yet provide job opportunities for millions of Indonesians across the different islands as well. So I think this is just an overview of Indonesia's innovative culture. And not only that, they're among the top climbers in the past decade, and it's one of the standout economies in the past 4 years, especially post-pandemic, with a stable government, stable policies. We saw in the last 8 years under President Jokowi, and now under the new president-elect Prabowo. Also, there's a lot of excitement amongst policymakers across the Southeast Asian region when it comes to Indonesia.
You mentioned mobility, Benedict, and the report also, and please correct me, I just, full disclosure, I read that the report, I believe, is not available in English. I saw an executive summary and some, promotional material that you have created, the organizations that made the report created for it, but I couldn't read the full report in the Indonesian language. Unfortunately. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understood correctly, on the report you were mentioned mobility and certain urban challenges, and the report suggests, if I understood correctly, adopting the Peter Newman's Entrepreneurial Rail Model for Jakarta's development as a smart transit city. Is this correct? And if so, how do you foresee this model addressing the challenges, of a city like Jakarta?
Well, before answering the question, I must have disclosure on my end as well, that I authored the chapter on tobacco industry in terms of innovation. And the real estate chapter was actually authored by Dr. Felito, as well as Chandra Rambi, the Vice President of DPD Real Estate Indonesia, Jakarta. So I will try my very best to explain from their perspective if I can. So basically, I understand that this innovative perspective, as you said earlier, Federico, that it adopts Peter Newman's entrepreneurial railway model and entering the Jakarta as a smart transit city. Yeah, I think one thing very important to understand here in the case of Jakarta as well as Indonesia is that large population that they need to cater to when it comes to mobility of human beings from one city to another. And because of that, it's very important. The mass transit is something that needs to be considered when it comes to developing Jakarta. And yes, we know that Jakarta will, of course, still be the business hub, even though the nation's capital is going to be moved to Nusantara on the island of Borneo. But that being said, business still is as hot and as active as before in Jakarta, and that's why mobility will be very, very essential. Now, Peter Newman's entrepreneurial railway model basically proposes that there needs to be innovation in terms of the way we move people from one place to another. And it's how cities should be designed, where it's transit-oriented development and not just stations, which probably boost real estate prices, like what is done in many different countries in the world, where public transport is seen as a way to boost real estate prices. But that should not be the way. Instead, it should always be about human-centered development, human-centered mobility, ensuring that most of the most densely populated areas are captured by public transportation.
Yeah, I know, I know who is the co-author of the, but I didn't want to put you on the hot seat or anything like that, but it was you participated on the report, so But anyway, let's go to the to your contribution to the. I will ask you also a few questions of other parts of the report. Sorry, but let's go.
Sure, no worries, no worries. I'll try to contribute as much as I can.
Yeah, indeed. Let's go to your contribution, and you wrote about the tobacco industry in Indonesia, and your proposal is that Indonesia should take a tobacco harm reduction approach. Please try to explain that as if I were a 5-year-old child, the clearest that you can. What do you mean by this, and what the repercussions will be? I also saw that there were very interesting numbers regarding health and repercussions in the health budget, but I don't want to, please reply as you want, but try to be as clear as possible with what you mean by a pro-harm reduction approach.
Before explaining a bit about tobacco harm reduction, let me just paint an overall picture of the context that Indonesia has. Indonesia is a very interesting country indeed when it comes to tobacco consumption. So it's the world's fourth largest tobacco producer. It has a market value of US dollars 34 billion. And also the excise duties is around 11% of total federal tax revenues. Tobacco excises is around 95% of total excise duties. However, the excise actually is not as effective to reduce tobacco consumption. Interestingly, in terms of Indonesia, it's one of the few countries in the world which has both an increasing smoking prevalence and an increasing absolute number of smokers. So according to the data that we included in this chapter, by 2030, Indonesia's rising smoking prevalence is forecasted to be the highest worldwide for men and second highest for both men and women altogether. Well, in 2023, an estimated 60 million adults, or 29% in Indonesia, smoke combustible tobacco products. And most of the smokers start between the ages of 15 to 19, with men 9 times more likely to smoke than women. Now, all of this data actually shows that smoking prevalence is actually really high in Indonesia, and it's something that the government has been looking at for a long, long time. And of course, there has been a lot of efforts by the Ministry of Health in Indonesia to tackle this growing issue. And why is that? Because I know I don't have to go through this, but basically, smoking has contributed to many direct and indirect economic costs and health issues as well, such as stroke, ischemic heart disease, COPD, and I can go on and on about the harmful effects. But I think we can all understand not only that, it's also the impact in terms of the economy, in terms of the loss of quality adjusted life years, productivity adjusted life years, when smokers they succumb to the sicknesses and the diseases that they have as a result of smoking. How much of productivity losses is Indonesia suffering from this? And we all quantified this in our chapter. So that is why, as I was saying earlier, the Health Ministry have considered a few different initiatives. For example, integrating brief advice on tobacco cessation into all facets and levels of health service delivery, leveraging digital technology, mobile cessation app, enhancing ecological interventions, to encourage cessation. But what we realize is that this strategy is really missing in terms of tobacco harm reduction. What it means is basically enabling those who are unable or unwilling to quit smoking for whatever reason to be able to access a less harmful alternative. To put it simply, is enabling people to smoke, but a less harmful alternative, ensuring that smoke is delivered to them in a much healthier manner. And this is based on the principle of innovation. Now, some of you might ask, why should we allow people to continue smoking? Why should we not encourage them to quit smoking? Of course, that is the ultimate goal, to encourage people to quit smoking. Smoking cessation is certainly the ultimate goal. But what if they are unable to immediately or gradually to decrease their smoking patterns, for example? What if they are unwilling to? How then can innovation come in as a solution provider to enable them to quit smoking? I think that's something that we have to think about as well. For example, considering the plight of bus and lorry drivers who have to drive really long hours. It's a monotonous job of driving on the highway. How do they keep awake? They probably rely on a stimulant, and most of them smoke cigarettes as a result of that. How can they deliver this in a form that is less harmful, rather than forcing them to stop smoking completely and probably risking their lives in the process of falling asleep while driving? So this is just one small example. There are many other examples of those who moonlight, for example. They have to do multiple jobs to make ends meet. They have to stay awake at different jobs, So we have to be considerate in that sense. What if innovation can deliver a better alternative to this? And one thing interesting to note, if I can go, the tobacco harm reduction, of course, sometimes it seems to be frowned upon. People hear it and they're like, oh, this is a tobacco industry driven initiative. But let me remind all of us listeners here that harm reduction is not something that is new, actually. We use sunscreen in daily life. Of course, we understand that the sun is harmful, much like smoking is harmful. But if you want to go out to the sun, if you want to enjoy the sun, use sunscreen. If you want to enjoy driving, we use seat belts. Seat belts is a form of harm reduction. Speed limits is a form of harm reduction. Birth control is a form of harm reduction. All these are harm reduction initiatives that we are so used to. But sometimes we actually do not think that we hear harm reduction like, this is something that's so negative. But it's really a health strategy to lessen the negative social and physical consequences with various human behaviors.
Yeah, that's a very important point, the one you made, Benedict. And please, just I want to because I don't remember now the numbers. And you said that in Indonesia had the highest smoking prevalence in men in the world. Is that correct?
Yes, this will be the case in 2030, where is forecasted to be the highest for men and second highest across genders. And that's by 2030. So not at the current moment, but highest in the future.
I was asking that because one important topic, as you know, at We Are Innovation, this is one of the topics that we are concerned about. It's not the only one, but let's say we try to find innovations that bring solutions to very human problems, that have a deep and profound human impact. And we think that everything that's going on in innovation regarding nicotine is exactly that. It's a very good example of that. It's the same as, it's analogous, better said, as how, for instance, Uber or other alternatives that you mentioned earlier have been able to solve a lot of, let's say, transportation problems that we used to have with how, for instance, taxis used to work and were inefficient, etc., etc. And this is, one of those topics as well. And it's definitely a no-brainer. And one of the findings that we we highlighted from the latest Eurobarometer analysis that the European Union commissioned and published very recently, is that one of the things we've been saying from the very beginning is being, let's say, corroborated by data in the European Union and in other places and regions as well, which is that innovative nicotine products are an off-ramp from smoking, are not an on-ramp from non-smokers to nicotine. By a margin that was like more than 90%, people who currently consume alternative nicotine products within the European Union are people who are either ex-smokers or people who want to quit smoking. It's not people. So in a country with a huge smoking prevalence as Indonesia, let's say opening and trying to stimulate in a good way, let's say the switch from smokers to alternative nicotine products, let's say it's a no-brainer. And you already have a lot of people, by the way, on nicotine to begin with, but the problem is that they're smoking tobacco. So definitely. And another thing also that you mentioned that's quite interesting is the impact on the public health budgets and the impact on public spending that this could have, the positive impact. Can you say a few words about that?
Yeah, before going on the public impact, I totally agree that basically alternative nicotine products is really not meant to be a gateway to smoking, as you said. Yeah, it's really to encourage the current smokers, conventional or combustible tobacco smokers, to switch to less harmful alternatives. And that's why it needs to be properly that basically smokers need to make an informed choice. And for an informed choice to happen, there needs to be education, there needs to be awareness, especially a lot of raising awareness of the harmfulness of combustible consumption and awareness on the alternatives that are available. Yeah, so that's very important to ensure that they are able to make an informed choice, or whether they want to move towards e-cigarettes, heated tobacco products, low nitrosamine smokeless tobacco products. There are many alternatives, snus as well. There are many alternatives in the market, but then they need to be able to make the informed choice. Now, coming to your second question earlier about the public health impact, as well as impact on basically public budgets. Yeah, so we understand, as I said earlier, that smoking contributes to a lot of smoking-related diseases, which have contributed in a large way to public health expenditure in Indonesia. And so, on our analysis, what we did is we run a few models of understanding the current smoking prevalence. From there, we used it to estimate if a certain number of smokers switch to a less harmful alternatives, or the whole entire population of smokers quit completely smoking and switch to a less harmful alternatives, how will this result in lowering the health implications, as well as the public health spending, as well as productivity losses? So what we did is using models from international models used, for example, in New Zealand as well, the experience of New Zealand, and we drew some lessons from here. So the calculation that we did is this: if 1% of smokers use less harmful alternatives, means they switch to a less harmful alternative from a combustible cigarette, the potential save in terms of cost is Indonesian rupiah 8 trillion, which is converted to about 0.5 billion US dollars, or 0.04% in terms of GDP saved. Now, this is a huge change already, using World Health Organization's estimation methodology in terms of smoking attributable costs. Yeah. Next, if all smokers, let's take it all the way to the very end. If all smokers use less harmful alternatives, Indonesia can actually save 803.6 trillion rupiahs, or 54.2 billion US dollars. That amounts to 3.7% of the GDP of Indonesia's GDP in 2024. Now, this doesn't even take into account yet the amount of productivity gains from increased health outcomes among the smoking population at the moment. It doesn't even take into account in terms of foreign direct investment or job creation from manufacturing opportunities of e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products, which I probably can go into more later. But this really shows that there is much economic sense in terms of encouraging tobacco harm reduction in Indonesia. There's just so much that the Indonesian government can save. And we believe that these savings will, in one way or another, indirectly propel Indonesia towards its goal in becoming a high-income economy, as presented in the Golden Indonesia 2045 vision. I think it's an important thing to consider for policymakers, the economic benefits of encouraging greater awareness, a greater incentive to switch by smokers to a less harmful alternative.
I would like us to go a little bit further regarding the economic and investment impacts, in job creation, etc. That opening to innovative nicotine products for Indonesia, what the impact could be, and also if you could give us like a very rough version of what are the key, let's say, changes that you would make into Indonesia's current regulatory environment in order to make it more friendly to alternative nicotine products.
Okay, on the additional benefits in terms of, for example, foreign direct investment and so on. So let me unpackage that a bit more. What we see is that the promotion of tobacco harm reduction through the Health Ministry, as well as other related ministries as well, such as Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, I think is first of all the expansion of manufacturing capacity and retail businesses of less harmful alternatives such as e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products. Now, this in itself will create a wealth of business opportunities with shops, e-liquid manufacturing companies, ancillary businesses, especially through small medium enterprises as well. Now, all this will definitely benefit many local communities through the sales, trade, job creation. And this could actually help reduce to a certain extent the unemployment rates and stimulate economic activities in the various regions of Indonesia. I think not only that, what we believe that an innovation-driven ecosystem through the e-cigarette and tobacco product industry, it actually drives technological innovation and the development of superior products. Now, what if we consider with me, imagine together, what if Indonesia could be a hub for new technologies to develop, especially since such a large population of the young folks as well as the general population are already smokers? Could they then spur new devices? For example, now we know that there are less harmful alternatives. Could we see a future where there are alternatives which are not harmful at all? Basically, you can develop the same amount of satisfaction or stimulant to keep people awake without the health repercussions or the negative health effects. Could we actually see this future? Before this, we knew that cigarettes were, there are no alternative cigarettes, but now we have alternatives. In the future, could we see even greater, better alternatives with no or really minimal health effects? This question beckons us to think that and to understand that innovation really can promote healthy competition, leading to the availability of higher quality products. Now, by pushing the boundaries of technology, product design, it meets the demand of consumers, but also sets new standards for product safety, efficiency, for a more dynamic and robust economic landscape in Indonesia. So it's a whole ecosystem that can grow with numerous economic opportunities, making Indonesia a pivotal player in the global e-cigarette industry. So I think that is something that we should consider. Now, going on to the second part of your question, what needs to be set in place? If I'm a policymaker in Indonesia, what will I do? What will I suggest? I think in our chapter, we have really highlighted the health savings, productivity gains, economic benefits. So what are the foundations that needs to be in place to make this a reality? We call this an ecosystem for innovation. Now, first thing that needs to be there, first principle, is there needs to be incentives to encourage and sustain positive behavioral change among consumers. And what are these incentives? How does these incentives look like? Number one, I think a lot of consumers in Indonesia, much like in Malaysia, are price sensitive, which means they are very dependent on the pricing of alternative products. And that's one of the reasons why illegal products thrive, because it's much, much cheaper than legal products. And consumers are not able to afford the legal products in the first place. So if price incentive is a crucial point, then maybe that probably what we can do is a risk proportionate taxation, which means taxation levels on less harmful alternatives should reflect the level of harm of those products. In other words, a less harmful alternative should be taxed at a lower rate. Even if the government wants to take it a step further, could they subsidize the less harmful alternatives and promote this to encourage behavioral change, since consumers are very much price sensitive? Another incentive really could be through education or awareness campaigns. For example, in New Zealand, what they have done is swap to stop in the United Kingdom, United Kingdom, they have a swap to stop program. In New Zealand, they have quit strong through using vaping devices. So these are some incentives or campaigns that can be conducted to encourage positive behavioral change. Second is also decreasing the use of conventional high-risk products by minimizing restrictions on less harmful alternatives. For example, in the case of Japan, where heated tobacco products are given a less restrictive environment for usage or consumption compared to combustible cigarettes. For instance, you can smoke heated tobacco products in some places where you cannot actually smoke combustible cigarettes. When it gets harder to smoke that combustible cigarette, basically consumers feel it's difficult. It's difficult to find somewhere. It makes their life difficult. So maybe they will be incentivized to choose a less harmful alternative, which is which you can smoke in more places compared to combustible cigarettes. That's one example. And the final point, which I think it's really all the most important, is to cultivate an innovation-friendly environment in Indonesia to drive the development and adoption of safer, more efficient products and technologies. I think that is extremely important. We need the right taxation framework for producers. We need the right policies for factories and companies, tobacco producers, to be able to embark on this journey of innovation, to embark on R&D. How can we improve the consumer experience? How can we ensure nicotine can be delivered at a less harmful, with less harmful effects, for instance? These are some things that we need to consider. We need a supportive institutional environment for innovation to thrive. This is extremely important so that more producers will be incentivized as well to move towards producing less harmful alternatives. I think underlying all this is really the foundation of incentives. Human beings respond to incentives. We know behavioral change is hard to. I mean, human beings hate changes. We are always very careful when it comes to change. They're like, don't change my behavior. It's so hard to do it, to make a change. But incentives play a very important role. Nudging behavioral change is definitely important.
Let's change locations. Let's go to Malaysia now, to where you are now, I suppose. And let's talk about how Malaysia is doing. Just, very quickly, as I mentioned when I was there a couple of months ago, Malaysia is becoming very important regarding data centers, regarding production of electronics. I mean, it is a very important country in all those areas. There has also been, I don't know, maybe this is a little bit it's a little bit dated, but there was this concept the government was pushing of a Malaysia 5.0. I don't know if that's still relevant today. It's part of the conversation. Where do you see Malaysia going in terms of technology, in terms of becoming or better, not becoming, of improving its status of an innovation hub for the region and for the world?
In terms of Malaysia 5.0, I think it's something that has been the focus of the government when it comes to the digital economy. And of course, we want to position ourselves in this drive for innovation across the world, especially as you pointed out in the beginning of this podcast, Asia as the upcoming region for innovation. And our digital economy definitely has been on a steady rise, growing around 21% annually. And of course, the contribution of the digital economy is among one of the highest within the ASEAN region. And it is a crucial driver to stimulate economic recovery. And as you rightfully pointed out, with the data centers, with the rise of incoming data centers, especially in a region that I work on quite substantially in Johor, in the southern part of Malaysia, right, geographically located just right above Singapore. There's a lot of exciting new data center investments coming in. However, I think one thing that we need to realize when it comes to innovation, as much as we have capital investment, as much as we have technology, investment in technology, what the one aspect that's really, really crucial that we really need to work on in Malaysia is on our talents. Digital talents. That's something that quite a lot of investors has expressed concern about. We understand that Malaysia's population is about 35 million. It's much smaller than Indonesia. There's definitely a lack of population going into digital skills, for example. And there's been a lot of reskilling and upskilling opportunities, but yet that being said, we still lose our talents to neighboring countries, including Singapore, of course, which is known as the Southeast Asia's digital economy hub. So with that context in mind, I think the government is very much concerned about the lack of digital talents, and so we are investing heavily in it through many different roadmaps and the digital agenda that we have. We hope that with more and more high-skilled jobs, less Malaysian talents will leave, contributing to brain drain. Or instead, we could also, one of the policies that we invite Amanah champion is that we need to leverage on brain gain instead. What do I mean by that? Malaysia's higher education sector, especially private higher education sector, is very much a vibrant, attractive hub. And we host quite a lot of the best minds from the global south, as well as least developing countries from all over the world, especially Muslim majority countries, which see Malaysia as a moderate Muslim country and a great ecosystem for tertiary education and even masters and PhDs. But what we lack is the ability to retain these talents once they graduate. Something that we need to think about in Malaysia is that how do we retain these digital talents from the global south? Once they graduate, can we, provide probably 2-year working visa? How can we retain them to contribute productively to the economy that will actually spur the digital economy in the long run? Something that we will consider, and we have been pushing this from Byte Amanah House of Trust for the past few years. Hopefully, this is taken up to see this as a way to encourage Malaysia to become a talent hub to grow and boost our digital economy.
Do you currently have like a visa for digital nomads or things like that, or is something in the making regarding that? Are there changes? You mentioned that maybe like 2-year visa. Is this part of the conversation in the current government, in parliament? Are they trying to apply changes or furthering whatever policies are going on right now regarding those topics, immigration for workers, etc.?
On the, I would say, overall view, we do not actually have a what do you call that, visa program for all the tertiary education, tertiary graduates, which I explained earlier. We do not have, but we have specific programs for certain industries. Give me an example. MDEC, or Malaysia Digital Economic Corporation. They have this. I'm sorry, Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation. They have this program called D DE Rantau, not D Rantau program, sorry. D Rantau. Basically, it's a new digital nomad pass, which includes curated services, facilities for nomads who want to make Malaysia their base, and to encourage more digital nomads to come here, especially considering the much lower cost of living, and the lifestyle that they can get at a much lower rate compared to what a nomad would pay in the US or in Europe. And also, we have a lot of natural attributes that make it's not very challenging, like a multicultural country. Many of our population speak English, safe, secure, low crime rate, beautiful environments to work from. The only thing is that we lack the policies, or the most up-to-date policies, to encourage these digital nomads to make Malaysia their home. So I think there is this program, but from what I understand, I think the uptake is not that great yet for now. I think there needs to be a lot more awareness built with this program, as well as understanding what digital nomads really want. For example, do they want a longer visa approval, for example, for a longer term? That's what I mean. Instead of just staying for 3 to 12 months, for example, do they want lower fees, for example? So I think this is something that needs to be communicated between the nomads, as well as the government agency, and through this program and that. I think they need to work together to improve this program. Yeah.
I remember reading, sorry, I think it was on the Financial Times, but I could be wrong, about recent developments in some countries regarding digital nomads visas. And what ends up happening is that the visas are not fast enough, are not easy enough, are not full enough. So people just arbitrate by staying 3 months wherever and then traveling somewhere else, because people are highly mobile now. Traveling is, thank God, I mean, it's extremely cheap. So if really things that are not streamlined and made very easy, many people, and more, I think in the future, will be very mobile. If you may ask me, if you may allow me the being arrogant and suggest a small public policy to attract talent to Malaysia, I would say you should give to every foreigner who wants to establish in Malaysia, give them just a voucher or two for, try your food, and that's it. You'll hook them forever. as you mentioned, the country is extremely safe. It's beautiful. It has a lot of things. Kuala Lumpur is an amazing city, and also the food is really top in the world. So I mean, with that, you can get them. Benedict, I want to thank you for your time. And before letting you go, just one last question. Because I think from you we will get a different answer than from someone, let's say, from Europe. How do you think Malaysia will be in 5 years? Better, the same, or worse as it is today?
Now that's a very interesting question. So I'm known to be an optimistic person. I understand that a pessimist is a well-informed optimist. So that being said, I would still be hopeful that Malaysia will be at a better position in the next 5 years. I think it recently in the Lowy Institute ranking of middle powers, Malaysia has risen up the ranks in terms of being a middle power, growing middle power. And I see that this is really a result of the political stability that we've had in the past 2 years, after a period of a challenging period of much political instability, where we had 3 different prime ministers and 3 different governments. which is certainly encouraging for a young democracy like Malaysia. That being said, now that we have greater political stability and policy sustainability as well, I see in the next few years, the next 5 years, we will be at a better position than we were before. But this is definitely contingent, and I always say this, on the strength of the Malaysian of Malaysians. Yeah, a country is only as strong as its citizens, and a country is only as prosperous as its citizens. And that's why it's an exciting region, really. Malaysia is an exciting region. Malaysia is an exciting country in an exciting region, Southeast Asian region. And I feel that we are now better positioned on the global stage as well as locally to rise in terms of our economic growth, in terms of our social policy as well, in terms of ensuring that innovation drives our economy. I see this really becoming even more important as Malaysia takes the chair of ASEAN chairmanship in 2025. And we are really looking for an exciting year where Malaysia drives growth across the region in Southeast Asia. In addition to bringing a long-lasting peace to Myanmar, that's what we hope to do as well. But beyond that, to really bring greater growth, regional growth, through innovation to the region.
Thank you very much, Benedict, again for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure there will be more opportunities in the future. I invite everyone to follow. You're active on LinkedIn. They can find you on LinkedIn. They can, of course, I will leave a link to the House of Trust's website so they can be updated of all your latest projects and what you are doing in Malaysia. And really, it's an amazing work what you're doing. And again, we're extremely proud and happy to have you as a partner of We Are Innovation in Malaysia. To everyone who listened to this, don't forget to subscribe. You can get these episodes on whatever platform you use for podcasts. We're also present on YouTube, where you can find also other materials as well. And you can visit weareinnovation.global to find all our social media and find everything we are doing. See you in the next episode of the We Are Innovation podcast.
Thanks for watching this episode of the We Are Innovation podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. To know more about We Are Innovation, visit weareinnovation.global.